Friday, August 19th, 2022. I'm Larissa. I'm going to talk about dance. And for a number of years, I was doing belly dance. I studied uh, both Turkish and Egyptian style belly dance from people who had studied in Turkey and Egypt both. Um, and before that, earlier in my life, I had done ballet and tap and jazz and all that stuff, right? Well, I started sword dancing as well, and this like irritated people. And um, the belly dance community here in the United States is extremely. Oh, I also studied for a while American tribal style, and the belly dance community is in the United States is really petty and really shitty. The women are awful. They really, really are. Every single one I've ever met, and just mean. They're just mean. They're just mean, 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 mean girls. And I don't know. Were really weird about it. Like I was accused of practicing magic. This. Just wrap your mind around this. Here I am doing exercise that was keeping me healthy, right? And was fun, and was fun to watch. I performed and stuff. Um, And I was told that I was performing magic and that every time I swung my sword, I was actually killing someone, right? This is a superstition that I was that it was witchcraft, right? Yes, that's what I was told. And I was harassed out of I was renting space for my own personal practice. I got to the point where I wasn't interested in dancing with other women because they were shitty, right? They were rude and mean and shitty. And um I was dancing just for me, right? Um, and I used to post videos of my dance. Uh, yeah, that is how awful people are, right? So it was like, I wasn't allowed to dance because I was practicing magic. No, no, no. So I was renting space when we were in Oakland. The last place I was renting space for practice was at a ballet studio, dance studio on Alcatraz. No, it wasn't on Alcatraz. Was that on Alcatraz? Yes, it was on Alcatraz. And there was a Romani guy that was following me around, and the dance studio was harassing me. Like when I'd come in, I'd come in early in the morning, right? Like as early as I possibly could. Because I didn't want to be there in the middle of the afternoon when they had children's classes or whatever. I didn't want to be in the way. I didn't want to take up that space. And my practice was in the morning. And I do yoga first, and then I danced. And they would do things like they wouldn't allow me. They would unplug the sound system, and I'd have to like plug the sound system back in or figure out where it had been unhooked, or they would do things like leave the floor super dirty, um, and stuff like that, stuff like that. That's what they would do, and then they would complain because the music that I was dancing to wasn't the kind of music the other classes were dancing to, but they could turn their music up as loud as they wanted, and they were awful. They were awful. They were horribly rude to me. Horribly, horribly rude to me. Um, and then there was this guy that was following me, right? And one day I parked my, I was it got to the point where I wasn't walking, I was driving, so that this guy wasn't following me every morning. And he would stand outside of the dance studio, right? He would stand outside the dance studio and wait for me. He would follow me home. It was creepy. I could point him out. I could identify him. Um, so I was driving, and this guy comes out of his house and was like, "I don't want you parking in front of my house." I'm like, dude, this is a public street. There was not assigned parking. It wasn't even a section of town where you had to have a permit on the back of your car to park, right? Like it was, and I refused to move my car, and it was just, that's the way that community treated me. And then when I came here, when we moved to Santa Cruz County, um, people were shitty as well. The dance studios, and the last place that I was renting, um, the people downstairs, it was a biker place. They were allowing homeless people to come up and use the bathroom and stuff that was right outside. And there was a guy that was frequently waiting for me, right? And they did that shit on purpose. They did that shit on purpose, right? And I was having my gas siphoned, right? I was having my gas siphoned out of my car while I was at practice. And one time I came out into my car and I knew that somebody had been in the car because my seat was pushed all the way back and the radio station had been changed and the time on the clock had been changed. I'm 5 foot 2 3/4. So the seat of the car is up almost as far as it can go when I'm driving. And police did nothing. The police did nothing. I was being too sexy. I was by myself, right? And then the woman I was renting from, like, she started like um, putting children's classes immediately after when I was renting. I was renting in the mornings, 3 days a week at like 7:30 in the morning. And then the time when I rented for like an hour and a half, when I'd come out, there'd be like all these little kids waiting or whatever. It's just like, what is the deal here? Just harassment. Just harassment. Constant, constant harassment. Right? And for a while, I was practicing here in the house, but the space isn't really big enough. And I also, the space that I was using for dancing and yoga is a space that I use for painting and stuff. And so it's hard to keep the floor clean enough. Like if you're a dancer, you know you need a clean floor to dance, or practicing yoga, you want a clean floor. And I'm not saying that my floor is, my house isn't a shithole, right? We're not dirty people, but when you are doing exercise where your face is like down on the floor, I want the floor to be clean, you know, like sterilized, mopped, used just for that purpose. And dancers, other dancers, like when I was renting space, it was I was she told me, she's like, oh yeah, I do events and stuff, and I invite dancers to participate. She never invited me. Like the implication was, you rent from me and be part of our community. And no, I was never invited. I was never invited. It was just take money from me. And what it comes down to a lot of times is like a competition thing. Oh, somebody might like you better than me. It's like, oh my God. Dumb. Really, 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 really dumb. But like I said, like even up in the North Bay, the only contact I had with the belly dance community in Oakland proper was when I was taking classes with American Tribal Style, and I went a couple times to a couple of the sales. Like it's common for belly dancers to organize like belly dance garage sales and sell costumes and things. And a lot of women sew and make things and that kind of thing. And so I'd gone to a couple of those and bought skirts, bought gear, right? Um, but women got really shitty in the belly dance community when there was a Moroccan shop that did live music, had live drummers on it's like Friday nights once a month, and I just happened to be there one night and danced. And they, are you a dancer? I said, yeah, I'm a dancer. And they invited the guys, the drummers, invited me to come back to dance again. Well, the woman I was taking classes from that at the time, Sandy, she's like, well, they don't pay their dancers. I'm like, you don't pay me either. Neither do any of the women. And it was fun to have live drummers who were really good, right? Like a full drum ensemble. That was fun. And um, I quit dancing with them though when they were doing a show at the Ashkenaz and they told me that if I bought a ticket, I could dance. I'm like, excuse me? No, if you're asking me to dance, I better be getting in for free and I better be eating and drinking for free too. So I quit dancing with them after that. But it's such a weird, but women there was like this weird jealousy and this weird, I don't know, disdain at the same time. It was obnoxious. It was obnoxious, but I enjoyed the dance, and I enjoyed um, it kept my joints lubricated, and it kept me, you know, active, right? Oh, but it's crazy, right? That's what my family said. You're doing that, you're crazy. That's not exercise. You need to go be on a treadmill. Right? There's nothing wrong with belly dance. The history of belly dance is actually a lot deeper than the Middle East and has its roots in the Far East. It's belly dance can be traced along the Silk Route, and the practice it wasn't originally intended as entertainment. It was a muscle training, a body training, intended to handed down from woman to woman for the purposes of toning and preparing the womb and the muscles in that area for childbirth. So because women were expected to give birth alone, the state of pregnancy historically, culturally, in cultures that practice belly dance, which are Romani cultures, Gypsy cultures, right? Gypsy, that's the N word to me. Um, Nomadic peoples on the Silk Route, when you were pregnant, it was considered a state of pollution, and um, a woman was expected to go a state of being unclean, right? And a woman was expected to give birth on her own. And it was because there were superstitions around childbirth or mortality, right? Um, was high, um, and that was like bad luck, right? And so if you made it, then okay. And then there's still a period of was still a period of time of uncleanness, right? What did I read? I read that it was like until the child was about a year and a half, right? The woman in some ways was isolated within community, and in some ways it makes a lot of sense for the mother and child, because the child is nursing and there's all that. It's not that the woman was abused, she was just isolated. um it was considered an unclean time or a dangerous time. So woman was supposed to go away from the caravan and was to give birth by herself in the woods, and the motions of the undulations of the abdomen were taught. It was done in this fun way of dancing, right, to facilitate childbirth. and to maintain reproductive health. So even like just having your period or whatever, keeping those muscles so you can move that stuff out. And I'll have to say, I sometimes use abdominal undulation during my cycle. Mhm. But there's a lot of superstition and stuff that goes with it too. And a lot of it still exists within belly dance culture, modern belly dance culture today. And most people don't know really where it comes from or why it exists. And once you understand what it was really all about, then all of that becomes really absurd. Mm. The other thing is, it also means that the older dancer becomes that much more important because the older dancer is able to teach, right? Pass that information on. And that's why there was never a cutoff age, right? Anyway, so when I talk about being abused into looking the way I look now as opposed to the way that I used to look, right? I was able to have my time and space for my exercise, and then the additional abuse that was added upon on top of that, being kept from my exercise, abuse that was added on top of that was from the government saying, oh, you can't go out, you can't do this, you can't, stay in your house, don't do anything, don't be around people. It's really, it really is, right? And I prefer practicing on my own to being in a group or being in a gym. Now, when I used to go to Palladium in the Zumba class, I watched a clip this morning of some guy who's blind who says he was at the gym and some woman like got in his face and said, "Stop staring at me." He's like, "I'm blind." Blind people, they aren't they can't see, so like it's just it was dumb. Although, like, I have been stared at in a gym before, and it was when I was going and taking classes, right? I was taking a weightlifting class, I took a yoga class, and I took a Zumba class. Those were the three. I took 3 classes a week. Those were the classes I took. And it was on particular the day when I had Zumba, there was this guy that used to stand at the door with like 2-inch barbells, just doing this. Like he wasn't actually doing an exercise, right? And he would stand there at the door and be like staring at me. So I moved around to other parts of the room, and finally I said something to the teacher, and the teacher's like, "Well, if you're at the gym, you're here to be looked at." And I was like, "Excuse me?" So I don't know what gym this blind guy goes to. I'll go work out in a room with him, you know? He can work on the machines and I'll dance. That'll be fine. Then he can come up to me and be like, "Don't look at me." People are awful. Launch Showcase had a mole um, at the gym as well. Roseanne. That was when I was taking the bar class. Bar was awful. And I remember like it was like 2 weeks before and in class, and she would look at me and she'd be like, "Launch, launch, launch." It was a Launch Showcase is a scam. Do not do not waste your money. Do not waste your money. They after that, all I got from them were casting calls for pornography in New York City. Hmm. That's what I got out of Launch Showcase was pornography casting calls. Yep. And they focus on children, right? Launch Showcase. I think they're a fraud. They're a total fraud. And think they have ties to human trafficking, right? If they had told me up front that I was going to be getting casting calls for pornography, that that's what they dealt with, or I would have never ever paid for the opportunity to perform in front of producers. Mm-hmm. Don't. Don't take your kids. Mm. And I wouldn't go to Palladium Gym either. They had their, it was at the time when I was having so much hip problem, and I was having some real discomfort. Um, they had a physical therapy, like they had a doctor there. There was a actual doctor's office in there, and I was like, oh, it was like sports therapy. I was like, okay, I'll see. So I went, and the guy said to me, he said, okay, I didn't go back. They took X-rays, and at least I got copies of the X-rays that time. When I came back for the second appointment, he said to me, he's like, all right, this is the therapy that I am recommending for you. He says, I think you need your pelvic floor massaged internally. I'm like, what? He's like, yes. Insert my hand and massage your pelvic floor. Do you think you'd be okay with that? And I was like, no. Like, and he's saying this to me while he's doing a physical exam on me. Like he's got his hands on me when he's saying this to me. So that's the kind of place Palladium is on Alameda Island. It's a skis ball place. And in the women used to bring their children into the locker room all the time, and they'd sit there and they'd stare at you while you were changing. They had a nursery. Like, children should not have been allowed in that locker room at all. And there were frequently women in there nursing in the locker room too, which I don't have a problem with women nursing their children when they're out. If you feel comfortable taking your titty out, go ahead. But like, I wouldn't eat my lunch in a locker room with a bunch of sweaty, dirty strangers. Why would you feed your kid their lunch in a locker room with a bunch of dirty, sweaty strangers? It just seemed dirty to me. Palladium's dirty. It's a dirty, dirty gym. And I have just come to feel that gyms are dirty, dirty places with dirty people. So, anyway, that's what I mean. And then I've had choreography stolen, right? I was releasing videos of dance that I was doing, which was, dance for me, whatever. It's like, don't take my choreography or my ideas. You gotta pay me for that. Hmm. And no, when I sword dance, I'm not performing magic. When I balance my sword or I swing my sword, I'm not cutting people. It's art. And anybody who believes anything other than that is a fucking moron. Mm.